Hello, this is Mrs. Ruiz, and today we're going to talk about the elements of art. The elements of art are the tools an artist uses to create works of art. There are 7: line, shape, color, value, form, texture, and space. Line is a path of the moving point through space. Line can be used to create something as simple as this line design on the left, or it can be used to create something as sophisticated as this design on the right. Line can be expressive, and it can have length, width, texture, direction, and curve. In this Picasso piece called Three Musicians, created in 1921, there are vertical lines, horizontal lines, diagonal, curved, and zigzag lines. Shape is defined as a two-dimensional closed area that is defined by other elements of art. In this Joseph Stella piece, the shapes are defined by the implied lines created by the changes in color. And you can see here there's a shape that is like the letter D, or you could call these half circles, and they're intertwined and interlocking half circles throughout the entire piece. There are 2 kinds of shapes. There are geometric shapes, like those in this Paul Klee piece, Castle in the Sun, created in 1928. Here we have squares, squares, rectangles, circles, and triangles. Any shape, geometric shapes are any shape with height and width. We also have organic shapes. These are shapes that are made by nature. In this Helen Frankenthaler piece on the left, we have this large blue lake-like shape that is kind of in the center, and then we have this big green shape here. It's kind of an avocado green. And then in this Henri Matisse piece, La Gerba, from 1953, we have all of these beautiful, colorful leaf shapes. Color is an element of art that is derived from reflected light. Without light, human beings cannot see color. These are all large-scale oil paintings by Janet Fish. The properties of color, there are 3, are hue. Hue is the name of a color, like red or blue, green, violet. Value is the lightness or darkness of a color. So we can see here that this is light, and the green next to it is dark. The intensity of a color refers to how dull or how bright a color is. Here we can see that the orange right here is dull, where the orange here is bright, and then this orange here is in the middle. It's a medium dullness or brightness. And we can compare this orange to this orange to this orange to this orange. And this Vasily Kandinsky piece called Several Circles, very simple, because that's what it is, several circles, in 1926. He's using circles to create a sense of movement. Colors can be divided into categories. We have primary colors that are used in this Roy Lichtenstein piece called Hopeless from 1963. And the primary colors are red, yellow, and blue. In this piece, as in the piece here on the right, both artists are using what we call a limited color palette, where they start from the beginning of their creation, and they decide, I'm only going to use primary colors, or as in the Marc Chagall piece, The Green Violinist, from 1923 to 24, I'm only going to use secondary colors. So he used the secondary colors of violet, green, and orange. And of course he used the neutrals here that you get when you mix those colors together. So we can make our secondary colors from our primary colors, and we'll learn more about that when we get to our module on color theory. Value describes the lightness or darkness of an object. In this piece that was created by a student, the student is using pencil and paper and creating the illusion of three-dimensional space and demonstrating that they have mastered the technique of applying value to create the illusion of a three-dimensional sphere on a flat surface in a physical environment. And then in this piece on the right, we have a professional artist who's drawn a portrait of a model, and they've also used value to define texture. We see a beautiful demonstration of the differences between the texture of the model's skin, her hair, the jewelry across her forehead, and the feathers that are around her face. Artists employ value in both black and white as well as in color. In Picasso's painting Old Guitarist from 1903, you can see that Picasso has used a blue value scale and a limited color palette to create this painting. So he has the entire range of blues here. And then in this photograph by Edward Preston, Pipes and Stacks from 1922, we see that Edward Weston has pushed the values in this photograph so that we can see the details in the shadow areas here, as well as the details in these bright highlights. That's something in photography that is difficult to do. Most of the time, these highlights would wash out, and these dark values would be incredibly dark, and we wouldn't be able to see any details in those. Form has three dimensions. It has height, it has length, and it has depth. So this is the form can be implied if we're talking about two-dimensional art here. This is a piece created by a high school student where they demonstrated their mastery of drawing and the use of value to create the illusion of three-dimensional forms that are overlapping in an environment. And then on the right, we have an example of a professional artist who's actually created real form that you could walk around. Oops, went too far. Here's another example of form by Klaus Oldenburg, Floor Cake from 1962. This is a larger-than-life soft sculpture of a piece of cake. It has height, and we can see that it has height, it has width, and it has depth. Texture refers to how things feel or look. When we're talking about two-dimensional art, like the two drawings that are on the left, we are talking about implied texture. The artists who created the kitty cat and the dog used pencil skillfully to create the illusion of the soft fur texture of a cat and the mop-like texture of a sheepdog. And then the professional sculptor on the right has used recycled tires to create the actual texture of this larger-than-life, or what we would call almost monumental sculpture of a beast with very sharp fangs or sharp teeth here and sharp fur in this outdoor sculpture. So I'd like you to take a moment to evaluate, to soak in the genius of Vincent van Gogh and this painting that most people are familiar with, Starry Night. Vincent has done something at the time that he created this was very innovative. He communicated texture with an element of art, and really he employed many elements in this painting, but one element predominantly or mostly. We could almost say that this painting was made almost entirely of this one element. So just take a moment to soak it all in. So Vincent had a way of painting that was unlike any other at his time. He used his brushes and drew lines over and over and over. He changed colors often, but you can see that the entire sky, the entire tree in the foreground, this is a cypress tree, all the mountains, all the rolling hills, all the rooftops, everything is made up of different colored lines of different shapes, different sizes, different widths, different curvatures or angles. There's so much line work in this painting and many of his others, and it creates a sense of movement and energy as it draws your eye around the piece. Yes, there's color. Yes, there's shape. Yes, there's many other elements of art in this piece. But if we really had to say that one element was dominant or mostly used, we could say it was line. Space refers to the emptiness or area between, around, above, below, or within objects. So if we look at the art on the left, we see men's pant legs and shoes, and then we see white space. Or some of you might have seen a woman's white legs and dress shoes. It depends on how your brain works. There's no right or wrong. It just depends on the way that you see. Some of us are drawn to the brighter, wider spaces first and the dark after. And some of us are drawn to the dark first and the light after. So it just depends. And we call these a positive negative space puzzle. And then in this example on the right here, you can see that the chairs take up the positive space within the composition. And when we say composition, we mean the organization of the space within this frame here. And the negative space is all the empty space around it. It doesn't have to be white space. It could be any color. It just means the empty space. Shapes and forms. Shapes and forms are defined by space around and within them. So this three-dimensional sculpture by Eduardo Chillida, The Eulogy to the Horizon, that was created in 1980, the sculpture itself is a three-dimensional form because it has height, it has height, it has width, and it has depth. It also creates these empty shapes, right? So it creates this negative space, and within that negative space we can see that there's a shape. And we also see that there's negative space here and here. So the form of the sculpture itself is taking up the positive space, and the emptiness around it and within it are taking up the negative space.